Hello, hello. I can hear myself. We are looking good. I'll get started. I've got quite a bit of material to power through. So welcome, everyone. I hope you're here for platform engineering for software developer and architects. Now, I'll introduce myself in just a moment, but I always like to start my talks with high-level key takeaways, the TLDRs, if you like. And if you leave with nothing today but these three things, I will be happy. We're going to hopefully dive in a lot more detail here, but these are the three things I want to really stress. Now, platform engineering should have a product focus. Your developers are the customers. It is not me trying to package up DevOps and shoehorn it in a different way. It's very much a product focus. We're delivering a platform to enable you to go fast with safety and with scale as well. Platform architecture, software architecture are symbiotic. I'm sure as a developer, I've definitely done this, right? Worked fine on localhost, pushed it to prod. Oops, like going over the wire, everything's a bit different. Good APIs, abstractions, and automations, the 3 A's I often talk about, are the prize for everything, I think, in software delivery. And in particular, we're not just swapping like old tools for new tools. We're trying to think about the way we're actually delivering software via the platforms. APIs, abstractions, automation, I think, is key. That is the 3 key takeaways. Very briefly, this is me. I started my career quite a while ago as a Java developer. Moved into architecture, bit of ops, CTO type roles along the way. Now I help folks build dev tools. I really want to capture all my knowledge and package it up and work with amazing people to push those ideas out in tool form. I've worked on a bunch of open source projects, OpenJDK back in the day, open source Java, Telepresence, CNCF project, emissary ingress while I was going through my API management phase, and now I'm working on Redux with Syntasso, and that's a platform orchestration framework. I love sharing knowledge, hence the InfoQ connections, hence the writing of books with a few friends. Do check them out, available at every good bookseller. But that's enough about me. I do want to recant. 3 years ago in Valencia, KubeCon EU, I did a presentation that landed relatively well. I was really pleased with the feedback I got from this. I was talking about from Kubernetes to PaaS and what's going to be next. I worked on building a few platforms on Mesos, on Kubernetes. We're all building a PaaS, a platform as a service, kind of on top of Kubernetes. So where are we going next? And I talked a lot about this notion of golden paths. Spotify leading the charge here, of course, but I really said the big questions to ask ourselves when we're building platforms: how much do you build yourself versus buy versus blend? And how do you assemble the control plane? Particularly for developers, we want a control plane into the platform that helps us ship code. Platform should make it easy to do the right thing and help us move with speed, with safety, and scalability. Platform engineering 3 years ago, believe it or not, was just becoming a thing at that time. It wasn't really talked about very much. I looked back on my dev career over 20 years, and I started out of uni quite happy, working on simple Java apps. I moved into more enterprise use cases. I was dealing with enterprise service buses, message queues. The cognitive load, that's that red spike, went up as I had to learn more things. And this was hard. I then moved into doing a lot more Spring Boot, a lot more Cloud Foundry, Ruby on Rails, Heroku. The platform was super simple. CF push, Heroku push. Look on my new Redux dashboard for feedback of things going wrong. This was a happy time. And then microservices, DevOps, all this good stuff we know and love pushed my cognitive load massively up. And I actually quite enjoy learning. I'm that kind of person. I'm sure many of you are. You come to KubeCon to learn these kind of things. But when I was consulting with a company called OpenCredo, based here in London, the clients I was working with didn't want to have to learn all the tools. Developers wanted to write JavaScript, write Go, write Java, solve some business problems. They didn't want to learn Bash, Terraform, Crossplane, Docker, amazing technologies, but it was just too much for them to learn in order to ship value fast. And I was talking at the time, all this amazing work going around the CNCF was a foundation for what a few of us were calling a developer control plane, DCP. And this is the early framings of what I'm going to talk about today of a platform architecture. And diving into this a little more, I knew as a developer I wanted to code, I wanted to ship, and I wanted to run. And I was working very much on Telepresence for coding, I was using Docker for shipping, and I was working on emissary ingress for running. I was really liking the tools, but this kind of top layer was missing. Backstage was a twinkle in Spotify's eye at this point, right? It was just emerging. Now Backstage is everywhere. But at the time, there was Clutch from the Lyft folks, a bunch of other projects, kind of putting this UI on top of your platform. This middle layer at the time, I knew there was something, leverage webhooks, CRDs, APIs, to build an integrated workflow. I didn't know how important that was. I knew the cross-plane folks were doing amazing work there, but now I realize this layer is very, very important. We'll dive into that more. Before we do, though, I want to talk about the what of platforms, because we say platforms quite a lot, but I'm not sure we're all saying the same thing. Much like DevOps, microservices, unless we agree on a definition, we're never going to get aligned, right? Particularly as developers and architects, we need to make sure we're aligned with the platform team of what are you building for me? I like this definition a lot. It's on the Martin Fowler blog, so it's got to be canon in our world, right? But I really do like this from Evan Botcher. He talks about this is what a digital platform is. It focuses on self-service APIs, tools, service, knowledge, and support, which are arranged in a compelling internal product. And the goal of that product is to deliver product features, as in your product features, at a higher pace with reduced coordination. Not no coordination, not chuck your jar file over the wall to ops, not chuck your Docker file over the wall. Reduced coordination. I like that a lot. That really speaks to me. Evan's pulled out the socio-technical side of this too, right? Services, but knowledge and support too. Really, really like that. If you're building a platform, you're platform architecting, you're platform engineering. The good folks at Gartner are on the case. You know it's serious when Gartner rock up and say, this is a thing, right? They focus on improving developer experience, self-service capabilities, automated infrastructure operations. Again, it's kind of the 3 A's, APIs, abstractions, automation, right? This is what a platform should deliver for us as developers, as architects. What are the goals of your platform? Be super clear. I've bumped into a lot of platform teams building a platform because they're a platform team. Does that make sense? If you build a team that's going to name it, platform team, they're going to build a platform. Are you clear of your goals? Be really clear on this one. You want to go faster with a platform. You want to ship things faster. You want to decrease risk, right? And you want to increase efficiency at scale. These are the 3 things. Not rocket science. I'm totally stealing this from good folks like Matthew and Manuel, Team Topologies. They really crystallized the notion of everything as a service, building a platform team. That book is gold. Gregor Hopper's built on this quite a lot with his platform strategy. If you haven't read that book, please do go and buy it. It's an amazing book. Super lucky to have several chats with Gregor over the years, and every time I learn something more. And actually, Gregor's got an even more amazing book called The Software Architect Elevator. And this, if you're an architect, is a mandatory read in my mind. What I really take away from Gregor is the need to use different language depending on where you're talking in the organization. Now, he uses the architect elevator, the architect lift, perhaps in the UK, right? And he talks a lot about, if you're at the C-suite, the 3 things there, go faster is make me more money, right? Decrease risk is keep me off the front page of the newspapers. Increase efficiency is save me money. That's the kind of language to talk at that level. When we go to the boiler room, where we're doing all the work, right? Gregor says you need to use different language. Go faster is improve the developer experience. Focus on the UX of the product, the platform. Decrease risk. Make it easy for me as a developer to do the right thing. I know security is important. I know observability is important. Make it easy for me to do the right thing. And increase efficiency is looking at the right abstractions so that I can deal with one application, one node, one cluster, one region, with reasonable kind of accommodations. I'm not completely changing my mindset as we scale. I really like those books. They're really good books. Platform architecture. Now, this is a bit of an eye chart slide, but it's kind of my presentation style, dare I say it, right? I like you to be leaving with plenty to think about afterwards. There is a link to a blog post I wrote about a year ago now on the Syntasso blog, and I've got the slides on SlideShare as well, so you can check them out. But being a Java developer, I like 3 tiers. I'm comfortable with 3 tiers right from back in the day. I don't think it's controversial, this kind of layer. I think the naming could be controversial. I had a great conversation over lunch with Mark from Diagrid, from the Dapper folks, saying, I don't like the name application choreography. I hear you, Mark, loud and clear on that one. But this layer is where we as developers interact with the platform. It is backstage, it CLIs, it's APIs. It is the realm of the app developers, the full stack engineers, and they want to code, they want to ship, and they want to run. Don't think this layer is controversial either. Infrastructure, operations, orchestrations, composition. It's where the platform engineers, the DevOps, the operators, sysadmins are working with infrastructure as code, Bash, all that kind of good stuff, CRDs in the Kubernetes world, and they are building out the infrastructure. The layer, which I think is a bit newer, a bit more nuanced, is this platform orchestration layer. Now, this is where you want to build a higher level kind of construct, a higher level API than raw infrastructure, compute, storage, networking, and you want to offer services that are high-level abstraction, but more relevant to your business too. Like, what does a database mean in your context? What kind of governance does it need? What kind of security, backups, all that kind of things does it need? This is the realm of like the tool I'm working on, Kratix, but Humantica in this space, Crossplane. I think your Argo and Flux CRDs are in this kind of space too as well, right? The good news, I don't think I'm alone in coming up with this. I really like when I see smarter people than me saying similar things, right? When I bumped into that Gartner article first, I was like, I can see the 3 layers in that Gartner article. I can see the application portal, I can see the platform, I can see the infrastructure. Keith's awesome book, if you haven't, it's actually, I think Plumie folks were giving signed copies earlier this morning. I bumped into Keith at the booth. This is an amazing book. I've read it since it was like V1, and now I think Keith's on V3. I got a preview, and Keith was again saying, I like this 3-layer separation of how I'm going to model a platform, where developers interact, what platform engineers need to build. And again, I was at Salt Lake City, very lucky at KubeCon last year. On the flight over, I read this amazing book by Camille Fournier and Ian Noland. Same kind of deal. I could see the 3 layers, and they actually called it like the paved path platform, this middle layer where you're abstracting some of the lower level infrastructure. It's nice when other people are saying similar things. We're kind of working independently, but many of us coming up with same conclusions. So going that, we're going to dive a bit more into platform orchestration. This is the sort of thing I want to explore a bit more today. But before we do that, I'm going to look at a few sort of platform architecture case studies. Take a step back through some of my time as a developer, as an architect, and explore how it relates to some of the platform changes I was seeing, with the goal that if you are a developer, are an architect, this will give you a good framing of knowing what to ask from your platform team, your infrastructure team, these kind of things. So first, like, a big sort of change in my career was working on what we call hexagonal architectures. And this was kind of, you put your business logic in the middle, you create a series of interfaces, ports and adapters, and you can swap in the implementations, as long as they adhere to the interface. So in the Java case, the famous thing was we always did interfaces for our database. In theory, you could swap MySQL for Postgres. Of the 20 versions of that thing I built, I think I only ever swapped the database once, because who swaps a database, right? But the idea was kind of good, and there's much better use cases in that database use case. You do want some kind of abstraction between perhaps your logging framework, your backups, these kind of things, right? It's all about creating cohesive business code, that kind of core application facilitates testing, because you're not having to like necessarily drive the whole application with all the HTTP code, all the database code. You can just test the business logic, and it promotes loose coupling. You can, in theory, swap out the ports and adapters. As long as you've got your adapters defined really well, or ports defined really well, you can swap out the adapters to change implementations, change parts of the platform effectively. Where this came from, where the challenges kind of emerged, is that layered and tiered apps were often highly coupled. I make one change in the sort of UI, and it rippled through all my business code, all the way through to the platform sometimes. I was deploying code in a Java application server, but also I had to deploy code in an ESB, an enterprise service bus, to make it run. And suddenly one change was just rippling over all my code base. I had to get the ops folks involved for multiple deployments. It was a real pain. Some of the abstractions were very leaky. There was this notion of EJB remote and home, and it was like you meant to write code as if it didn't matter whether you were going localhost or whether you were going over the network. And we all know that matters a lot, right? There was like container-managed transactions that were meant to hide all the gnarly transaction semantics from me, but when it broke, oh man, I was debugging crazy like stack traces in Java, trying to figure out what was going wrong, right? It was really, the abstractions leaked. The platform evolved. We saw a bunch of solutions pop up, particularly driven by the good folks over in Netflix. I know we're not all Netflix, right? But there's many things we can learn from them. And the Netflix OSS kind of stack that exposed a lot of the platform services as Java SDKs, Java libraries, was really useful in my world. And eventually Spring, the Spring framework, a big Java framework, brought a lot of the Netflix stack into this like open source community and rebranded it as Spring Cloud, with collaboration with the Netflix folks. This was amazing, but it was only good if you were in the Java ecosystem, because they were Java libraries into platform kind of components like locking and databases and all that kind of good stuff. As it evolved, I remember 2014, Netflix Prana popped up, and Prana was like basically a Java server exposing an HTTP API, which other languages could call into to get access to the platform components. So they're running like all the Java libraries, but like Go and Node could call in and access the platform. This was really interesting. We started to see things like Dapper pop up around other sidecar implementations. And I've got a Dapper diagram here. And if you look closely at that diagram, you can kind of see the 3 layers. There's the SDKs at the top, the app layer. There's the platform abstractions in the middle, the locking, the queues, the databases, and then the implementation below of how you actually make that happen in Dapper, right? How your queue is Amazon SQS or it's Rabbit or whatever. The thing you still need to provide the platform bricks for your golden path is my pitch, right? Because yes, you've got these great abstractions in Dapper and sidecars, but how do you actually deploy your application? And this is the golden brick. We talk about golden paths, but often we want to change out those bricks on the path. So you need to deploy components as a service. And this is something I think was, took a while until we kind of got to that space. Well, at this point, slight interlude, massive shout out to the Lego folks who came along to an earlier version of this talk in Salt Lake City and really took away this notion of golden bricks. If you haven't seen this talk, they did it at PlatEng Day yesterday. It will be on YouTube fairly soon. They gave me a shout out, which I really appreciate from the Lego folks, from Mads, thank you very much. And they came to the booth and gave me a golden brick as well, a Lego brick, which I thought was like freaking amazing, right? But this notion of golden bricks, thinking, well, I'm not going to necessarily, as a developer, accept a golden path. I might want to customize that path depending on what type of application I'm running, right? Data application versus a standard 12-factor app, for example. After hexagonal architecture, microservices were the in thing, right? Very much so. You're creating the cohesive and loosely coupled services, but as Martin Fowler famously said, you need these three things to be true in order to actually make microservices a reality. Now, the challenge was, like we sort of said, we need rapid provisioning, but a lot of companies took that as, I'm going to use ServiceNow to raise a ticket, and some ops engineers will get on that and deploy the database later. That's not really self-service, right? It is self-service in the sense of, like, the developers can, we can raise a ticket, but it might take days, weeks, months before I get my database. I saw a lot of companies in London, in Europe, where I was working, were just building on top of a single database schema, multiple microservices. And then when the schema changed, it rippled through all the microservices, and suddenly we were doing this big distributed monolith. We were deploying all our services at one go. This is quite dangerous. There's a lot to like in DevOps too. I really do like DevOps, but that you build it, you run it, and you own it, doesn't scale if you're like in a bank or insurance company or that kind of regulated environment. You want like as fewer logging frameworks as possible. You want as fewer ways to deploy your code as possible. So when the auditors come, they're going to be signing off all these things. If you've got 100 different logging frameworks, good luck having a chat with the auditors on that one. And heaven forbid if Log4Shell pops up, right? Where's Log4j running in my infrastructure? I've got no idea. But the DevOps thing is, I'm not ragging on DevOps, love it. Lot to like, but a lot of folks' interpretation of it stretched it a bit far, particularly in an enterprise context. You really want the platform to centralize quite a lot of these things. The visibility, security upgrades. Infrastructure solutions popped up. We had Heroku for the small folks, like myself, I was working on some startups. Heroku was great. We had Cloud Foundry for the big enterprises. It did an amazing job, amazing piece of work, but it was very opinionated. The golden path was almost a golden cage at times, right? It was very opinionated. And if I wanted to do something non-12-factor, good luck to me as a developer. Good luck to me as an architect. There was a whole lot of app scaffolding popping up at the time, and I call this jokingly puppy for Christmas because you say to your ops team, your platform team as a developer, I need a database and I need some like networking stuff set up in Amazon, and they give you some Terraform code. And day one, much like that puppy, happy days, right? But then day two, the puppy starts making a mess. You've got to walk it all the time. Kind of like day two is like Terraform needing to be evolved. Or a 0 day pops up in Nginx, right? And suddenly you're having to you as a developer having to patch the container, patch the config. And you're thinking like, should my platform team be doing this? I've got that puppy for Christmas. I love puppies, right? But as in, you've got this responsibility with that puppy for Christmas, much as there is for templates as a service. If you can crank a handle and get a template, great for day one. Not so good for day two when you need to get those upgrades going on. You need changes happening. I saw a lot of dev teams having to learn Terraform. I actually started learning Terraform as a developer. I learned Crossplane. I started playing around Plumi, all these good things. It was just a lot to learn, right? And again, I love learning. Other teams that didn't were really struggling. Now we're seeing a lot more like workload definitions popping up. There's open application model, I think it is. There's SCORE from the Fanatec folks who've donated it to CNCF. There's Radius from the Microsoft folks. There's things like Dagger here as well, which I really like. I know Dagger's gone into AI a little bit more now as well, but I think they've actually got a booth somewhere, so go and chat to them. But they've kind of got this 3-tier model. If you like look at the diagram upside down, kind of move it around a little bit, they've got this notion of app SDKs and kind of a Dagger engine, and it's like a very customizable CI/CD. I really like what the Dagger folks are doing. Platform orchestrator, this is where I'm working at. You can literally see the 3 tiers in that kind of Kratix diagram, if it's not too small, where we've got the apps at the top, the kind of backstage, then we've got the platform orchestration in the middle, and then we've got the infrastructure at the bottom. We're trying to separate those layers out. There's this Fusion Stack, CNCF project, check them out too from the Ant group. There's Humanitech in this space as well. Many other folks are playing around in this kind of platform orchestration space. But this is where we're trying to expose an API at the platform for us as developers to consume everything as a service. A queue, a database, even a higher level constructs, even higher level services you might want to build on. And there's that holy grail kind of thing, like that Cloud Foundry, that Heroku type model where I have a build pack, I write some code, I push it into the build pack, and magic happens for me. The pipeline runs and things get deployed. You still need those golden bricks though. You're building your golden path, but you need some way of putting the bricks down on that path. This is where I think platform orchestrators, that middle layer we looked at in the architecture, this is where I think it's really important as developers and architects to get our head around. We need to have APIs and abstractions to interact with the platform, and sort of they leak into our code. How do we interact with some of these things in our code too? Very briefly, I want to touch on cell-based architecture. I have lots of chats at the booth about this. There's only one slide on this one, but I see it as somewhat of an evolution, particularly if you're in a regulated environment. Cell-based architectures are kind of microservices plus. They are, the infrastructure tends to be tightly coordinated. The blast radius is minimized. Whereas microservices might share common infrastructure, cell-based architectures don't. Slack have talked a lot about how they use cell-based architecture. AWS use a lot of cell-based architecture. And if you are going to do this in the world of Kubernetes, you really need to embrace things like cluster APIs. Cluster API, because you'll be going to be spinning up hardened clusters for each cell. You're not going to be deploying multiple microservices to a single cell, a single cluster. You need multiple clusters. You're going to be looking at things like the pod autoscalers, CADA for managing this kind of stuff. And particularly in my time with the Kate's gateway spec and open service mesh, you're going to be looking at advanced routing if you're doing a lot of work in the cell-based architecture space as well. Can be done on Kubernetes, but there's more tooling involved. And again, think about the abstractions of how you deal with an application, how you deal with a node, and how you deal with a cluster. I think as a developer, I should be able to think about those in relatively similar ways. Don't make them so different that I really struggle to understand how my application is going to scale. Wrapping up, I think we're good to time. So key insights. I'm kind of drawing some key insights that I want you, perhaps as developers, as architects, take away and chat to your platform team about. If you're platform engineers in the audience, this is something to think about as you're delivering your platform for your customers, the developers, the architects. Abstract thinking, first thing. Solid, Cupid, principle of least surprise. I love these kind of frameworks. Growing up as a Java developer, I learned about gang of 4 patterns, and I learned about coupling and cohesion, solid, single responsibility, open close, all that good stuff. Dan Hurst North talks about Cupid quite a lot. Composable, Unix philosophy, all that good stuff. These apply to platforms just as much as they do applications themselves. So as developers, as architects, we can help platform folks think about these concepts when they're building platforms for us. I don't think developers want magic, they want to be magicians. Great quote by Eleanor Chisa, creator of Darklang and a few other things. She's done amazing stuff. And I really like that notion of I want to be able to get things to my platforms, but don't make it super hard for me. And a lot of it is watching for leaky abstractions. The earlier tools I talk about in the Java world, the ESBs, the distributed transactions, the abstractions leaked all over the place. And it was a nice idea from the early platform teams offering these things to me, but it actually ended up costing a lot, particularly on that day 2 when I was debugging, I was upgrading, I was learning a heck of a lot about the Java transaction spec, which is not a good thing, right? Not a good thing. The size of the spell matters. Cue badly generated ChatGPT image, but the size of the abstraction, how you expose queues and databases and platform components really matters for us as developers, us as architects consuming these things. You can't have good developer experience without good user experience. We need to design the control planes for APIs, CLIs, and UIs. I see a lot of folks going portal first, and I get a bit nervous about that. I love the portals, but it reminds me of my old days writing web apps, like in Java with JSPs and Ruby with ERBs. We never put the business logic in the web pages, because that's the display stuff, right? And we don't want to couple our logic to the display stuff. I see a lot of folks putting their business logic, their compliance, their security into the portals, and I get a little bit nervous about that. I might be wrong, all right, but I do get a little bit nervous. I say optimize for automation, that platform orchestration layer, API first. Think about your platform APIs. The UI on top, whether it's a CLI, whether it's backstage, portals, I think is almost an implementation detail. Aim to minimize the cognitive load and build for progressive disclosure. Now, that is a bit of a I only bumped into this term recently. I did a fantastic webinar with Sevi Kim from the Backstage team, and he talked a lot about progressive disclosure, like make it easy to get started, make it easy to do the right thing in terms of like, you might want to spin up like a database, and it's just literally a name and a size of the database. But if you want the experts to put more config into that database, you've got to have some way of progressively just disclosing the options. Like the day 2 story. How does the abstraction need to change to grow over time? I want the advanced options button, that kind of thing, right? Check out Sevi's talk about that. I did learn a lot from Sevi about that. Don't forget the product focus. It's the key thing. You're thinking about developer experience. You're thinking about user experience. We think so much about this from our products we're building for our customers, like our end users. I don't think we think enough about developer experience and user experience for our dev tooling that we use day in, day out. Same for the platforms, right? Fantastic webinar. I was chatting to Sarah Wells, who's the creator of Enabling Microservices book. Amazing book. Sarah was the director of platforms infrastructure at financialtimes.com. Like, you can find Sarah on the speaking circuit. Always worth watching. Super awesome. And she's going to be at KubeCon London next week, actually. I'm going to chat to her and learn a lot then. But she talked a lot about, in the book, around making sure the platform supports the dev teams. And she lived it at the Financial Times as a developer. And then as she moved into operations and into a leadership role, those stories in that book are gold. The ThoughtWorks folks, love what they do. This platform as a product page really helps us think. It mentions Backstage, it mentions Crossplane, it mentions a bunch of tools. This is a really good page to dive into, to think about that user experience of the platform. And finally, what gets measured gets managed. I wanted to talk a little bit about metrics. I mentioned early on, I see a lot of platform teams building platforms, and when I go and chat to them, they're often not sure what they're building or why they're building it. I think the Humanitech folks have done a report recently that says like 46% or some number of platform engineering initiatives do not have a metric of success. And that makes me as a leader very nervous. If I don't have a metric of success, how am I going to judge the team, judge the work? And it's not like in case I want to fire you kind of thing, but it's like the company's got a business goal, right? As in, we've got to have metrics. This book, yet again, really helped clarify my thinking on the metrics. Camille and Ian talk a lot about impact metrics, guardrail metrics, and product health metrics. Now, if you think about DORA, I think we all know DORA, right? Impact metrics is lead time. How quickly can I make an impact? A guardrail metric would be change fail percentage. If I'm going super fast but breaking everything, not a good look, right? And product health is like how much adoption of the tooling are we getting. This, the chapter 5, I think it is. I've recommended it so many times. Great, great book. In the book, they talk about adoption rates of the platform. If you're building a platform, how many folks are actually adopting the platform? What's the onboarding time to the platform? The time to the 10th pull request, as Spotify famously talked about with Backstage. These are great indicators for, is the platform delivering on its goals? Lagging indicators. Is there an app retention rate? Do people come back around and they've deployed an app, they liked it, are we as developers engaging with the platform again? What's the upgrade, patch cycle time? All these, I won't read them out. All these good things are kind of indicators of, is the platform being successful? I talked to Paula, my boss, quite a bit about this, and I think we had some guests on this podcast as well. And I also recommend this email from the InfoQ folks about improving developer experience. A lot of the folks, Jessica and other folks in the audience here, Andy here as well, I've tried to get all that knowledge from KubeCon London last year, where we learned a bunch about developer experience and building platforms from these amazing folks. I put that in this eMag, or got my team to help me put this info in this eMag. So those are 2 resources. If you want to understand metrics, you want to understand developer experience, these are really good. And lastly, the Goldilocks and the DevX framework. I know it's DX Core 4 now, it's rebranded a little bit, but I really like this notion of thinking about DORA. It's well understood. I can chat to C-level folks about DORA. They understand it these days as much as we do as architects and developers. It is very delivery focused though, right? I think there's a bit more nuance in the Space framework. Dr. Nicole Forsgren, massively influential in my life, but the Accelerate book, all these kind of good things. Her and a few colleagues have really pushed this with like Space, like the S is literally satisfaction. What is the developer experience like? You can capture this from surveys, a bunch of other ways. This covers all bases. It is a little bit complicated. That's why I like the DevX framework from the DX folks. They may even be here. I know that Laura was on a panel with all my colleagues, actually. But I like the DX Core 4 stuff. It is nicely balanced, right, as a way of kind of managing my framework. And I've got a nice graphic here, which you can have a look later on. It kind of like, as a way of capturing, like, is my platform delivering on the promise it's making? Oh, perfect timing, I hope. Wrapping up. Final slide to get us all thinking, right? Expanding on those 3 points at the start of the presentation. Developers, we are the customers of a platform. I think the platform has to be built as a product. Dev, ops, we've got to be chatting all the time. What's my requirements? How does the platform get architected? we as developers and architects can teach operations folks quite a lot too. It's a two-way street. Aim for that speed, that safety, and that scale. Those are the three things. If you get it right, going faster, decreasing risk, and increasing efficiency, magic happens in my experience. Build the platform with API first. I honestly, it's a personal thing, but I'm getting nervous with like portal first. Like, it's almost like building the UI before you're building the back end. And sometimes that's the right thing to do. Other times I get a feeling it's not. If you already know a bunch of your platform goals, build the platform engine first, then like put the UI on top and that kind of thing. But that's a personal thing, right? The platform and software architecture are symbiotic. We really want to build your platform on a multiplayer mode, right? You want dev, ops, infosec, finance, architects, all SREs, all the folks playing together on the platform. Like, you need to get like this collaboration going on because it's really hard to architect a good application without knowing what the platform offers, and it's really hard to build a good platform without knowing what the application needs. It's got to be a multiplayer game, this thing, right? And lastly, APIs, abstractions, and automation are the key. I like this a lot. Coupling and cohesion and the leaky abstractions are universal concepts. This is something I think developers can really help ops folks who are often from a scripting background, often not so product focused. Like these kind of things, like teaching my ops colleagues about this 10 years ago was super valuable. They taught me a whole lot about scripting. They taught me a whole lot about infrastructure. I'm forever thankful for that. But we can teach them a little bit about some of these core principles too. And finally, this, I'll leave you thinking about this, and I'm still working on this, but think about golden bricks rather than golden paths. I think it's a temptation, particularly as platform engineers, we're like, if only I can build this golden path for my developers to be productive. And I really think you need to be golden bricks so developers can construct their own golden paths. Because if you don't, there is that danger, the cliche goes, the golden paths do become golden cages. At that point, I'll put up a couple of QR codes there for feedback, and you can also check out the Cratix docs I'm working on as well. Stop and have a chat to me at the booth tonight. I'm hanging out at S641 later on, but thank you for your time.